Hey everybody, Danny Greco, what's up? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what no one can get away from right now, but the coronavirus, COVID-19. Discuss more a little bit about how it's having an impact in our local Seattle housing market. So really, there's still a lot to be learned, right? And we're kind of at least at the time I'm taping this video, which is in early April, we don't know everything. We don't know exactly what's yet to come. So take what I'm saying as just my own opinion, which at this point is still pretty uneducated. So take that for what it's worth. But we're at the moment now pretty much in this very awkward position of having things on pause. And what I mean by that is we all know in around March 20th, I think it was, or somewhere around there, the governor of Washington, Governor Jay Inslee, came out and basically put the state on shutdown minus essential services. So going to the grocery store, doctor, pharmacy, things you need to do just to live. A couple days after that, but only about 3 or 4 days after that, a revised order came out and it deemed that real estate services were deemed essential, albeit there are restrictions around things like open houses, which were no longer allowed. If you are showing a buyer, you can only take one buyer in at each time, as opposed to however many is in your party. There's sanitation standards in place that you must adhere to. So we could still operate, but the game was a lot different. And I think really by that point too, the psychology of not just any buyer, but I think any buyer or seller, but I think anybody within our state was pretty much kind of turning things off at that point. It wasn't, buying and selling a house wasn't priority and focus number one. There were a lot more important things going on. So what we saw, prior to that, if you saw my last video in terms of what the March statistics looked like, we were just going on the up and up. Inventory way down, buyer activity way up. This was resulting in really aggressive multiple offers, and we reached, at least for single family homes, a median sale price of $790,000. We hadn't seen something like that in all of 2019. You got to go back to 2018 for when we actually hit 800 and above. And we peaked in May of 2018 at 830 before everything started coming down a bit. So we were on a trajectory like I thought we'd be. I mean, we'd been seeing that activity really increase with inventory down and consumer confidence high. So that's a real good recipe for a lot of appreciation, which could be tough for buyers, but great for sellers and homeowners. So now with that mandate in place, things have really kind of changed. There's not a lot of activity taking place, and at least I can speak for myself. If I'm consulting with somebody who's interested in selling their home, unless they are really tight on time and need to sell right away, I'm really not advising them to list their home before this mandate is lifted, because if you're really eliminating the opportunity for a lot of people to see your house, if you can't even do an open house, you're really limiting your exposure. And I think that's going to reflect on how long the house stays on the market, what you can get for that house, how long you can sell it, that sort of a thing. So what we can expect maybe coming out of this, I really don't know. I don't know if there's still going to be a lot of people that are gun shy about putting their house on the market, or is now everyone, once that ban is lifted, going to start flooding with all this inventory that would have been lifted during those times the ban was in place, and now we're suddenly flooded with inventory. What are buyers going to do? Are they going to remain out on the sidelines? Are they going to jump back in? We don't know. But what I can tell you is so far, of course, we haven't seen too big an impact on the market, and everything right now is still too early to really jump into statistics. All I can say from a statistical standpoint is we've of course been seeing less homes come on the market during this ban is in place, but in terms of where those homes are selling at, how quickly they're selling, we're still probably another 30, 45 days from those statistics being available. So we'll just have to wait and kind of see what happens there. But I know from talking with people, with clients, myself and other agents in the office, it seems like the most affected market is really your luxury market, probably your $1.5, $2 million buyer and seller and up, because those people are more likely to have been disproportionately hit, or I should say rather should have had their stocks and their 401ks and their that sort of thing disproportionately affected compared to like your first time home buyer and that sort of thing. So when those buyers have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, they're perhaps no longer in the market and might step out and kind of lick their wounds before jumping back in, and who knows how long, if ever, that might be. So I've started to see and hear kind of that market to struggle a little bit, but that's not your everyday buyer, and I really don't and have not seen anything change in terms of that really kind of what we call entry level price. In Seattle, it's really probably what $750 and under is entry level, and I just don't see that demand really changing any. So a few things that I thought that might be helpful at kind of looking at is comparing this current pandemic to what we went through in 2008. Easy to compare because they're both recent in our mind, and they're the two most recent kind of downturns. And that's, to me, really where the similarities pretty much end. 2008, that whole crisis was 100% built on faulty economics. It was purely a financial situation, and specifically a housing problem. That was an entire house of cards built on faulty loans, shadow borrowers, things that basically anyone, if they had a pulse, was getting a loan for pretty much whatever they want. If you've never seen the movie The Big Short, cannot recommend it enough. How wonderful, how simplistic they explain everything, and how realistic it was for that industry too. So go out and watch that if you haven't. But that triggered, obviously, a once-in-a-lifetime atomic meltdown of a financial situation where you saw banks and financial institutions just fold undernight. That is not at all what we have going on right now. What we have going on right now is purely a health pandemic that we, as the country and economy and people in play there, have manually shut down the economy in order to stop the spread of this virus and facilitate or expedite a potential recovery. So this is something where we've kind of cut off an arm to save our body, sort of a thing, and it's all been done manually by ourselves. So when you look at where we were prior to this happening, all signs of the economy were humming right along, right? We had record high stock market, record low unemployment, housing was booming. I mean, all these things, and that were built on solid fundamentals financially too, were just humming along. So it's not wild to speculate that once we start that recovery, and hopefully we're kind of in some V or U-shaped recovery, that we shouldn't pick back up where we started. Now, I don't know that we'll necessarily go back to where the stock market was. Unemployment has certainly jumped, understandably, with a lot of people that have lost their jobs, and I don't know that we'll necessarily get back to those 50-year low figures, but we should, over time, get back to where things were headed, because this was not a financial process. So going back to the housing market, when things hit the fan in 2008, in Seattle, we had roughly 20 months of inventory of that time. I mean, it was a buyers on buyers on buyers market. You could not sell a home. We had 1 month of inventory last month, okay? Way different. Also, people selling their home back in 2008 might have had little to no equity. They might have been underwater. Today, people have tons of equity in their homes. So it is a entirely different landscape now versus then. And I know there's a lot of media sensationalism out there that the housing market's busting, or there might be a headline here on Facebook or Reddit or something like that. And again, every market is a little different. I don't know what's going on in other markets, and so that certainly could be the case. As far as Seattle real estate goes, we've been so far very resilient. I expect us to have taken our bumps and that sort of thing during this time, but I definitely expect us to pull out of it, and expect this to be short-lived too, especially as we get in the summer months, and Mother Nature should help us expedite the recovery and stem the spread of this virus too. let me see what other notes I have here. So yeah, just generational low inventory, people staying in their houses longer too. Back in 2008, people on average were only living in their house about a little over 4 years. Now that's almost doubled. About 8 years or so, people are living in their house. So there's less houses on the market, obviously, if people are staying in there longer too. So yeah, just a really different time. And of course, again, I could be wrong with all of this. We'll see. This is taped in early April. We'll see how it plays out over the next little while. But overall, not too concerning of damage for our housing market as it stands now.